And we are live. Hi, everybody. Good day, wherever you are watching or listening from. I'm so glad that you're here. This is a Monday morning, my time, or Monday noon, my time. And so that means, as most Mondays, here I am live. And most Mondays, I'm here to do a episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. That's not the case today. I'll tell you more about that in a second. So, first of all, if you're here with us live, start by saying hello and telling us where you're from in the comments of whatever social channel that you're on. We'll hope that you'll do that. Let us know who's here. And while you're here, I'm going to introduce our guest in a second. You're going to love her. But while you're here, I want you to imagine that you're joining us for a cup of coffee or tea or whatever, depending on the time of day and your personal preferences. But just I encourage you to share your questions, your comments, and ideas as if you were joining in the conversation, because then we'll have an even better conversation. So before I introduce my guest, let me just tell you why we're here and how I think you will benefit. So if you may have joined us in the past at this time or at other times on these social channels with me for a live episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, which, as I've already said, this isn't. This is actually a conversation with an expert and a brand new author who's going to be joining us at virtual LeaderCon in just a couple of weeks, September 12th through 15th. Virtual LeaderCon is the premier virtual leadership conference featuring over 30 experts over 4 days. I'll tell you more about that later, but for now, if you're curious, you can go to virtualleadercon.com to learn more, and I'll put that link out here again for you later. Today, we're talking about organizational change, and I'm guessing that you've dealt with a little bit of organizational and individual change in the last couple of years. And so I have, as I said, a wonderful guest to join us to talk about that and some other really great ideas that she's been working on based on her experience. So I just want to say this before I introduce her. Welcome to this special preview of Virtual LeaderCon. So now I'm going to bring her in. There she is. I told her when she came in, all she needed to do was smile, which she did. And she's also waving. So our guest is Celine Schillinger. She is an award-winning French entrepreneur. You'll hear it in her voice in a second. A change practitioner and a consultant. She has over 30 years of field experience working with both small and global organizations across several continents. A blogger since 2013 and a TEDx speaker. She has been knighted by the French government for her workplace change efforts. I don't see a crown or anything. I don't know. I don't see a badge or anything like that. Lessons from her journey in change are captured in her first book, and it's wonderful. Dare to Unlead, the art of relational leadership in a fragmented world. She will be joining us again live for a longer conversation than this during Virtual LeaderCon on 2 weeks from today, Monday, September 12th at 12:45 Eastern Time. So basically 2 weeks and 45 minutes from now. And you can get your free seat to Virtual LeaderCon by going to virtualleadercon.com. And with that, Celine, welcome. So glad that you are here.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and thanks for the wonderful introduction. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. So let's see. We've got San Diego and Dallas, Fort Worth, and Bridget's in Iowa. You're welcome. And of course, she's from Lyon, France.
That was me.
And we have someone in the UAE, and we probably got lots of other folks. So those of you that have joined us but have not said hello in the chat, here's your chance. Hope you'll do that. So one of the things that you talk about in this book, you sort of make a global indictment because you say that we have a failure of leadership today. So I'd really like you to, it's a strong statement. So why do you say that?
So thanks for asking. I first say that because I have experienced it. I have been a long time corporate citizen. I worked in various companies around the world in different capacities. I stayed 27 years in the corporate world. And I have been very happy at times with my work and my colleagues and the camaraderie, etc. But I have often been utterly disappointed with leaders. And I need to say right from the start that I'm very empathetic. I think it's I'm not here to do leader bashing, or contribute to that. I think it's a bit easy to put the blame on others, and never question ourselves. Nevertheless, I still think that in leadership as it is approached today, there are elements of toxicity that contaminate our relationships at work, and that also hamper collective performance. And I actually find that some of our societal problems, naming, for example, this division and fragmentation of the
You could
world,
just
and
stay with toxicity. We probably are all right with you right
yeah,
there, right?
I actually find that a lot of our societal problems stem from the world of work. And it's a world of work that has not evolved as quickly as we humans. We have new needs, new expectations, new technologies have, transformed the way we relate to the world and to each other and to, the products we purchase, everything. And yet, leadership is still built on old fashioned, well, not just old fashioned, but mechanisms that used to work in the past and that do not work so much in the now with us, and with complex radical changes that we have to face.
Yeah,
So
we could just use the pandemic, but it's not just that. I
for
mean,
example,
that's
but
certainly an example, but it's certainly not the
exactly,
only one.
yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so in the subtitle of the book, you introduce an idea that as a person who's written a number of books about leadership, I know that it's sometimes hard to come up with a phrase or a
Mm,
frame that hasn't already been used.
mm,
And yet I don't know of anyone else that's used this phrase, relational leadership. So
mm.
given the context that you just gave us, what is relational leadership?
Mm. It is a bit the opposite of the kind of leadership we tend to worship today. We tend to think of leadership as an individual skill set, something that, some people have, some people don't have, something that we as individuals need to develop, and, all those self-help books are here for that, etc. I personally find that thinking of leadership as an individual skill set misses the point entirely, and even contributes to maintaining the problems we're in. Um, Nothing in our complex, fast moving world can be solved by an individual alone, or by several, by a group of, exceptional people. uh, Problems will be solved if we all get involved, because it's not just because of because of the diversity of ideas, and although this is super important, but it's because of this process of ownership, this co-authorship, the sense of agency that needs to be developed in people, is part of what will make them and us and everybody adopt new ways of doing, new behaviors, contribute to change, rather than complain about it, and try to blame people for what's happening, because the challenges in front of us are huge, climate change, all those things, and the pandemic, and there will be others, and all those things are humongous, and they cannot be solved by the longer we keep relying on heroes to save us from
Right.
problems,
Right.
the more we will push the problems away, and have them become bigger and bigger. So
So
instead, I suggest to think about the relationship and the relationships instead. And I think the revolution of networks has enabled this new approach to leadership as a collective capacity instead.
so uh, I'm with you on that, and I get that. And so you mentioned societal change. I'm going to dial that back a step and just talk about organizational change for a
Sure.
second. And so as you think about this perhaps new way, or certainly new way of framing what it means to lead, how do we use that? I mean, we promised to talk about organizational change. So how
Yes.
do we use that to drive, to inspire, to enable organizational change? How does this different approach to leadership help us create organizational change?
So, in this approach, there's a much bigger focus on the social capital of the organization, a much heavier focus on communities, on building, nurturing, connecting various communities, having a rich ecosystem internally, but also between internal and external, considering the whole ecosystem and nurturing the relationship, the quality of relationships, but also the relationship technology, using all the social platforms extensively and so on, developing relational skills, and considering that and really networking the organization, connecting the system to more of itself in order for the system to be, so the organization to be complex enough. We've tried to, simplify, organize, align, etc. for many years, and it has worked in the past. Now the external world has become so complex. We need this complexity inside the system as well for it to be able to handle, to connect with the external diversity in the best possible way. So the difference would be, for example, I'll give you an example which I have participated in order to solve quality problems, industrial quality problems at a big pharma manufacturer. Instead of relying on the quality department alone, experts and functions, etc., and standard operating procedures, etc., we nurtured, we invited and created the conditions for a network and various communities to get involved in this as well. And there, this movement, because it was really built as a movement, as almost like as a political movement. And my work draws a lot on social activism, because I believe there's a lot to be imported in the workplace for the benefit of the business. There's a lot there around people engagement, which is super interesting. So creating this movement has enabled that organization to solve in a record time frame problems that it had been unable to solve for the past 15 years, despite tons of money and
Lots of
consultants.
time, lots of smart people, etc. Right?
Exactly. The difference was in the relationship, the patterns of relationships changed, and we invited people to develop their agency together rather than sitting down waiting for instructions.
You said three words in the middle of that to me are at the heart of what your book is about, and that is, you said, we created the conditions.
Yes, definitely.
We
Mm,
created the
mm,
conditions, and
mm.
I'm going to tell everybody, if you're joining us late, this is a preview for Virtual LeaderCon. You see that up in the corner of your screen. You want to go to virtualleadercon.com to learn more about how you can hear a longer conversation between Celine and I, and my similar conversations and interaction with learners like you, with 29 or so other leaders besides Celine, and you can do all of that for free, believe it or not, as much of it as you can be available for, etc. So, having said that, we're not going to go as far in this conversation as I might like to, or you might want us to, because I'm just being honest. I'm teasing you a little bit to come to Virtual LeaderCon, but there's three things in the book
Mm,
that we can't dive in deeply to, Celine, but I want you to just give people the high level view, sort of the view from the early chapter about them, if you will. There's three ideas that I think my take on what you've done is to say we're creating the conditions using these three big ideas:
mm,
liberty, equality, and fraternity. And I told you before we started that there's only one of those words that people have really heard in a leadership book before, and that's probably equality. And that's only probably been in the last 10 years. So
Correct.
very quickly, talk about what you mean by those three ideas and how they relate to helping us create the kinds of change that you were just talking about.
Mm. So very briefly, and again, yes, we'll have a deeper conversation, and I can't wait to dig with more details into all that. But very, very briefly, liberty relates to the self-emancipation move that we should all be doing. That is enabling ourselves to see the system, um, and see how in our own behaviors or attitudes or mindset we reproduce it, we maintain it, or we change it, we evolve it. Okay, so change starts with oneself, and it's this liberty that I invite people to go and to try, and experiment. Equality is about removing, as much as possible, patterns of domination and submission, which abound in our workplaces, unfortunately, and which are no longer adapted to the way we want to relate to one another. So, how do we remove those patterns of domination and submission? I believe we do that through networks, by networking the organization, by creating a much more networked pattern of interaction in our workplaces, which will be great, which is great for diversity, the diversity of cognitive diversity of the whole system. And finally, fraternity, or you could call that collegiality or community. This is related to the willingness of people to work together because they like it. They like to do things together. So how do we create that feeling in organizations? You cannot direct that from the top. You cannot, even with communication, and there's something else. So how do you create that? And I have a few ideas about it.
Well, give us one. I mean, I did want to
Mhm.
kind of, this is the order that you talk about in the book, but I did
Mm,
want to have you talk a little bit more about this one, actually.
this one.
So,
Mm,
at least today, I wanted, when we're back together, we'll have
mm.
all sorts of fun, but
Yes.
for longer a period of time. But give me, so I guess what I'm saying here is, if I'm a frontline leader, or if I'm a
Mm,
leader in the middle, I'm not a
mm,
CEO, I'm not in the C-suite, how do I start to apply some of these
mm,
ideas? And just give
mm,
us an example here in the
mm.
area of fraternity.
So, how do you apply these ideas? First, you need to realize that expecting your team to march like an army and to follow orders will not create that kind of things, right? So, there has to be something which is more in the realm of feelings, right? That means you need to be like open to having some sort of connection around feeling, creating, reaching people's emotions. And it can be fun, it can be all sorts of emotions, but tapping into the people's, the collective's emotional side. How do we do that? Through our communication, through our um, the way the way people are invited to contribute to the work. It can be, I mean, I'm always really interested in any sort of artistic practice in the workplace, one way or another. And it's not something completely foreign. You can invite some artistic practice in quality improvement, for example. Why should quality improvement be boring? It doesn't have to. And you'll engage people much more, and on a much more lasting basis, if you have this sort of emotional connection. Now, the big thing the big source of knowledge in that field lies, in my opinion, in movements. How do you create this sort of emotional attachment to a cause, right? Which makes it unnecessary to have lots of structure and bureaucracy, and it alleviates the pressure of organizing, because then you there's a lot of knowledge around that, but it's about creating the possibility for self-organization to happen. And it can only work if people stick together because they want it, right? So it's
Yeah.
the this magnet that needs to be created, and this magnet is obviously much more powerful when it is co-created. So there's a lot of
Pretty hard to edict.
co-creation.
Pretty hard to
Yeah,
edict fraternity, right? Like thou shalt
exactly,
all,
exactly. Yeah.
like each other and love the mission that we're heading toward. All of that. So I love that.
Yes.
So,
Mm,
liberty, equality, and fraternity, and you can hear the passion that Celine has for this. And I think that they're one of the things that I think, Celine, I love about the book and about this conversation is that it's not necessarily that you have ideas that we haven't heard, at least in some
mm,
ways before,
mm,
but the way that you're framing them and
mm,
the way that you're helping us think about them, I think are extremely powerful. And I
mm,
think that that's the lesson for all of us as leaders,
mm,
is to not just change our thinking and our mindset, but then having ways to frame it and communicate it can be a powerful thing. Anytime we have a word that becomes,
mm.
uh, we have a lot of words that we use that are really
Yeah,
powerful, but we've
mm.
used so much, they've lost some of their
Exactly.
power. And I think what you've done here is help to give us some new ways to frame some things I think extremely, extremely valuable.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
um,
Uh,
last chance before we go today, but we're back together in 2 weeks. But last chance for now. Is there something else perhaps that maybe you feel like you really want to share, or something that we were just talking about that you'd like to add to, sort of one last nugget that you want to share with people?
Maybe one last nugget is about relates to the sense of superiority that is sometimes derived from the term leadership. We envision leaders as being above others, right? We have this leader and followers image, which I think we need to really get rid of because it's not helping. But and my suggestion is. Maybe tough to hear for ego boosted leaders or executives, but my suggestion is to actually try to disappear in the collective. That's a bit provocative, I understand that, but my point is to say you're a great leader if you've enabled the collective to be so good that it can work excellently without you. Hmm? And then you can move on to other, and pollinate other collectives.
You have been listening to the author of this book, Dare to Unlead. So where do you want to point people? Where can we learn more? Where can people learn more about your work? Where do you want to point them? How can they get connected with you? I'm assuming if they're on LinkedIn, they can go connect with you, as I have.
Yes.
But
So
how else can
LinkedIn.
you connect? How do you want people to reach out? Where can they learn more about your work, get this book, etc.?
So thank you. Great. So LinkedIn obviously is a great way. Twitter, my handle is Celine Schill. My website, weneedsocial.com. And an Instagram. I have an Instagram and I have a YouTube channel. So basically, you can find me more or less everywhere.
If you can spell her name, everybody, you can
Exactly.
find her.
Look, it's
Uh,
written here.
weneedsocial.com, right?
All right.
Weneedsocial.com.
Yep.
And so I'll put another link up here for you all. And that is, I've said it like 3 times, but you need to go to virtualleadercon.com so that you can join Celine and I and many others over 4 days, starting 2 weeks from today, the 12th of September. But I have a question for all of you who have been watching or listening, whether you're live or later. And, that is, now what? What action are you going to take from the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 days, 2 weeks, 12 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, 15 years, 16 years, 17 years, 18 years, 19 years, 20 years, 21 years, 22 years, 23 years, 24 years, 25 years, 26 years, 27 years, 28 years, 29 years, 30 years, 31 years, 32 years, 33 years, 34 years, 35 years, 36 years, 37 years, 38 years, 39 years, 40 years, 41 years, 42 years, 43 years, 44 years, 45 years, 46 years, 47 years, 48 years, 49 years, 50 years, 51 years, 52 years 3 or so minutes that would add value to your work. What idea that Celine has shared would be of value to you? What action are you going to take? Because if you don't take any action, sort of what was the point? And so that is our challenge to you before we go, is that you leave not just thinking new thoughts and maybe being inspired a bit, or maybe having some provocative thinking to do, but rather what action will you take? And so I encourage you to do that. And I certainly encourage you to come back and join us in a couple of weeks. Celine and I will be together in just about, about 2 weeks and 20 minutes from right now, at Virtual LeaderCon. And you all can go to virtualleadercon.com to learn all about the conference, the 4 days, the various speakers, the 30 or so speakers, and get a free ticket to join us for as much as you can or your schedule allows live. If you're the buffet kind of person, you can just say, I'm going to come and take as much as I want. But if you're the entree person, you can go look through that schedule and block the 45 minutes with Celine, and then block 45 minutes on another day for you that meets with your needs. Hope you'll do those things. And Celine, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I would like to say a special hello to Natalia, who's joining from Ukraine.
Yes. And to all of the folks. So we got like 7 countries that said hello to us today, which is fantastic, but especially to her. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. And thank you all for being here. And we hope to see you all again. And until then, have a remarkable day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone.